The moment my brother looked across the dinner table and said, "Real family only," I felt something inside me quietly break. It was supposed to be a happy weekend. After almost 2 years of everyone being busy with their own lives, my parents had finally planned a big family reunion at their house. My cousins were coming, my aunts and uncles were coming, even relatives I hadn't seen in years had promised to be there. I had been looking forward to it for weeks. I bought a new dress, I brought my mother's favorite dessert, and because my father had recently been struggling with some family paperwork, I even took 2 days off work so I could help him organize everything. I thought this reunion might bring us closer. I was wrong. When I arrived, everyone seemed cheerful at first. My mother hugged me tightly. My father smiled and said, "I'm glad you're here." Then my older brother Daniel walked into the room. He barely looked at me. "Hey," I said, trying to keep things friendly. He gave me a short smile. "Didn't know you were coming." I laughed awkwardly. "Mom invited me." He shrugged. "Yeah, I guess she did." I ignored the comment. At dinner, everyone was talking and laughing. My cousins were sharing old childhood stories, and my father was telling embarrassing stories about Daniel and me growing up. For a few minutes, everything felt normal. Then someone mentioned the next family reunion. I smiled and said, "I can't wait. Maybe next time we can make it even bigger." Daniel slowly put his fork down. He looked directly at me. Then he smirked. "Real family only." The table went silent. My smile disappeared. My mother immediately said, "Daniel, that's enough." But he leaned back in his chair. "What? I'm just saying. Some people suddenly remember the family when there's something to gain." I stared at him. Something to gain? I had no idea what he meant, but the way he said it made everyone uncomfortable. My father looked down at his plate, and that was the moment I noticed something strange. My parents weren't surprised. They looked worried, almost as if they knew exactly what Daniel was talking about. I wanted to ask, but before I could, my mother quietly touched my arm and whispered, "Please, not tonight." So I stayed silent. I smiled through dinner. I helped clear the plates. I even laughed when my cousins told jokes. But inside my mind was racing. What was my brother hiding? And why did it feel like everyone in that house already knew? But what I didn't know that night was that Daniel had been telling a completely different story about me for months. And before the reunion ended, I was going to discover the truth. The next morning, I woke up early. I couldn't sleep. Daniel's words kept repeating in my head. Real family only. I went downstairs and found my father sitting alone in the kitchen. He looked exhausted. "Dad," I said carefully. "What is going on?" He avoided my eyes. "Nothing." "Dad, please." He sighed. Then he said something that completely changed the way I saw my family. "Your brother thinks you don't belong in the decisions about the house." I frowned. "What decisions?" My father became quiet. Then he explained that Daniel had been handling some family financial paperwork for months. There was a property my parents owned together, nothing unusual. But Daniel had convinced them that because he lived nearby and helped them more often, he should handle everything related to it. I understood that. What I didn't understand was why he wanted me completely excluded. My father hesitated. "He told us you wanted your share early." I stared at him. "What?" "He said you asked him about selling the property." "I never said that." My father's expression changed. "I know that now." My heart sank. Daniel had been telling my parents things about me that simply weren't true. He had apparently told them I was pressuring them to sell the property. He had even suggested that I was only being nice because I wanted money. Suddenly, every strange comment from the night before made sense. He wasn't just trying to embarrass me. He had been building a story about me, and everyone had started believing it. I felt betrayed. Not just by Daniel, by the fact that my parents had believed those things without asking me. I went upstairs and found an old folder on the desk where my father had been keeping the property documents. There were emails printed inside. One of them had my name on it, but I had never written it. I read it twice. Then I realized something. The message claimed I had asked Daniel to sell the property and send me my share. But the email address wasn't mine. It was an address Daniel had created using a similar name. My hands started shaking. I took pictures of everything. Then I found more. There were messages where Daniel had told relatives that I was only coming to the reunion because of the property. That was why my cousins had been acting differently. That was why my uncle barely spoke to me. That was why my mother had looked so uncomfortable. Daniel had spent months quietly turning my family against me, and I finally understood something important. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to insult him. I didn't need to create another family war. I just needed the truth. So I called my parents into the room. I placed the documents on the table. "Mom, Dad," I said, "I need you to read these." My mother looked confused. My father read the first page. Then, the second. His face slowly changed. Daniel walked into the room. "What are you doing?" "For the first time, I'm letting everyone see the whole story." He immediately became defensive. "You're twisting everything." "No," I said calmly. "I'm showing exactly what you sent them." He reached for the papers. My father stopped him. "Daniel." His voice was different now. Firm. "Don't touch them." Daniel froze. My mother began reading the messages. The room became completely silent, and then she looked at him. "Why did you do this?" Daniel didn't answer. For the first time all weekend, he had nothing to say. The truth didn't explode like I imagined it would. It settled over the room slowly. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Impossible to ignore. My father finally asked Daniel why he had created those messages. Daniel kept saying he was only trying to protect the family, but nobody believed him anymore. Eventually, he admitted that he was afraid I would have a say in the property decisions. He wanted everything handled his way. He thought that if he made everyone believe I was only interested in money, they would stop listening to me. My mother started crying, not because of the property, because she realized how easily she had doubted her own daughter. She walked toward me and whispered, "I should have asked you first." I hugged her, and somehow, that hurt more than anything Daniel had said, because I had never wanted money from my parents. I wanted my family. That afternoon, my father called everyone back into the living room. He told them the truth. He showed them the documents. He explained what Daniel had done. One by one, my relatives apologized. My cousin hugged me and said, "I believed him. I'm sorry." My uncle shook his head. "I should have asked you myself." I accepted their apologies, but I didn't pretend everything was suddenly perfect. Some things take time to heal. As for Daniel, my father removed him from handling the property paperwork. Everything was moved to an independent professional, so nobody in the family could control it alone. Daniel eventually left the house. Before he walked out, he looked at me. For a second, I thought he might apologize. Instead, he simply said, "You always have to prove you're right." I looked at him and answered, "No, I just refuse to let your lie become my truth." Then he walked away. The reunion had started with me feeling like an outsider, but by the end, I realized something. Being family isn't about sharing a last name. It isn't about who lives closer. It isn't about who controls the money. And it certainly isn't about who tells the best story. Real family is built on trust, and when trust is broken, silence doesn't repair it. Truth does. I went home that evening feeling strangely peaceful. The reunion hadn't turned out the way I wanted, but maybe it gave me something more valuable: clarity. I learned who was willing to believe rumors. I learned who was willing to listen. And most importantly, I learned that I didn't have to fight for my place at a table where someone else was determined to push me away. Sometimes the strongest revenge isn't destroying the person who hurt you. It's standing calmly in your truth until their own lies fall apart. And when I closed my front door that night, I finally smiled, because for the first time in months, I wasn't wondering what my family thought of me. I knew who I was.